Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, February 19th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. College sports writer Jesse Newell is on today's show, and he's here to talk about a story he wrote earlier this week suggesting there's a better way to select the NCAA Tournament field than with a selection committee. If you know Jesse and his love of analytics, you won't be surprised to learn this system involves numbers and percentages. Also, Jesse gives us his AP Top 25 voting rationale, which differs from many others who vote in the poll. His system takes into account factors that other voters don't use, and sometimes that creates a situation where a team or two in his top 25 and the AP poll wildly disagree. This season, one of those teams has been Missouri. Jesse explains his system. After a break, we shift gears, and you'll hear a snippet from an interview that Star columnist Vahe Gregorian conducted with Bob Kendrick, president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. The museum received a collection of memorabilia recently from none other than the late actor and director Penny Marshall. Bob tells Vahe about her connection to the Negro Leagues. But first, here is Jesse Newell. Jesse Newell joins us. Jesse, of course, covers the Kansas Jayhawks. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon, so Jesse covered the KU Kansas State clash in Manhattan on Wednesday night, a defensive struggle with Kansas winning, 59-41? Tough game all around to watch, Jesse. The shooting was particularly abominable.
Yeah, K-State brought in their walk-ons with a minute left, and they immediately hit 2 threes and made me think that maybe the walk-ons need to be playing for both teams because, yeah, it was ugly. And, it's sort of funny at this point because you can kind of predict Bill Self. He's you kind of know what he's going to say, and he loves these wins. I mean, he just does. He loves defensive efforts. He loves Big Ten style. He loves winning winning comfortably when he doesn't feel like his team shot well or particularly played well on the offensive end. So he was pretty happy going out of Manhattan. But yeah, based off that first half effort for both teams where it was sloppy and there were some turnovers and there was just nobody making any shots, I think I tweeted at halftime that KU was up 9. And probably deserved to be down 5, and K-State was down 9 and probably deserved to be down 25. So there were no winners from that first half, whether it was fans of either team watching or media members or coaches or teams. Nobody was a winner watching the first half of that game.
We'll get into some KU and K-State talk next week, but the reason that Jesse is here today is I wanted to talk with him about his article that appeared in the print editions of the Kansas City Star, I think on Wednesday, but it was online a couple of days earlier, still online. And the idea of this story is there is a better way to select the NCAA tournament field than with a selection committee. So basically in one article, Jesse trashed the time-honored tradition of the NCAA tournament selection committee that works selflessly and tirelessly to select the 68-team field. And so Jesse has found a better way or suggests a better way. I found it fascinating. I hadn't considered it. And it all revolves around a statistic that I had not heard of until I read the article, and that is wins above bubble. So that's the setup, Jesse. Take it from there, and then we'll chat about it.
Yeah, and this isn't completely a criticism of the tournament committee because they're asked to do a very difficult job, and one that I think a lot of different people have a lot of different ideas about how it should be done. And in the end, you kind of end up with a process that you have a lot of questions about at the end. It's like, hey, how did you come about and get this team in there and not this team? And it seems like any committee you have is going to have different answers. They have different criteria, depends on what side of the bed they woke up on. And that seems like a process that probably could be done a lot easier and a lot more transparently if it was automated. And so, yeah, that's wins above bubble. I know some of these acronyms kind of get out of control a little bit, but if people are familiar, it's sort of, you hear wins above replacement in baseball. It's just kind of a way to say, hey, here's a replacement player. Here's how much better they are. Wins above bubble is sort of like the college basketball version of a schedule-based thing. And it's a very good way to have a resume type of measure for college basketball. So basically, it looks at advanced stats and it says, hey, what percentage chance would a bubble team have of winning a particular game based off of who the opponent is and whether it's on the road or at home. So I think the example I used was the KUK State game. I think it was 82%, 82% of bubble teams, based off the numbers this year, should beat Kansas State in a road game. So basically how Wins Above Bubble works in a very easy and digestible format, which I think is part of the beauty of this, is that most people can figure this out with a brief explanation is, so Kansas plays at Kansas State. Okay. If Kansas wins, it has done 0.18 games better than a bubble team, because a bubble team is expected to win at 82% of the time. If KU loses, it gets negative 0.82 added to its total because it's done 82% worse than what a typical bubble team would do. The basic point of this, though, is you add up every game from every team, and you have rankings that immediately compare all teams to every single other one. And you have that in real time. And so I think some of the hesitation, especially I hear out there, is people saying, well, you don't want to use margin of victory. You don't want to use a bunch of numbers out there to determine who should be in the bracket. And the beauty of this thing is, for Wins Above Bubble, this only looks at wins and losses. This only looks at resume. And so this will compare Missouri to Kansas, to Belmont, to Loyola of Chicago. And then to me, it's a much better way of finding out who should be in the field, because everybody knows in advance what their ranking is and what they need to do moving forward. So not only can you look at your number and say, hey, okay, we rank 60th in Wins Above Bubble. We're outside right now and need to get a bunch of wins late. But you also could look at the rest of your schedule and say, oh, this one's worth 0.5. This one's worth 0.3. If we win these three games in a row, it's going to put us, right in the middle of these things. So instead of kind of having this sort of I don't know, it's kind of fuzzy, if you will. You're not sure what you're doing to help out your tournament resume, and you're not sure how the tournament committee is going to look at these sorts of things. I think this would sort of clarify things and allow teams, especially the ones that are on the bubble, to know exactly where they stand, they know exactly the wins that they need to get in, and it puts that in their control, not anybody else's. And so I think that's kind of one of the beautiful things about this thing, is if it was used, not only do you save money with not having a tournament selection committee, but you're allowing these bubble teams to know exactly where they stand in real time. So there's no question marks about that afterwards.
So the value assigned to a particular team, I guess I haven't looked at it or studied enough to know what the math involved is to assign the value. But once that value is assigned, it's just a matter of adding up the percentage points to reach a total, and that is your basically your power ranking at the moment. And if you just go 1 through whatever the number of at-large teams are, what is it, 40, whatever it is.
Well, you wouldn't know that number exactly because of the conference tournament and the at-large.
Well, sure.
You wouldn't know exactly, but again, that's sort of the beauty of it, is if you're 40th in Wins Above Bubble, okay, well, that's a 10 seed. 10 seeds are going to make it in. You know what I mean? If you're 52nd, then hey, that's kind of the 13th seed. It's going to depend on who gets the automatic burst, that sort of thing. But it also just lets you know in real time your exact standing, instead of having the Lunardis and everybody else in the world trying to speculate on who it is and having a million different answers out there. It would let, especially some of these mid-major coaches, and again, some of the ones in the high conferences that are kind of middle of the pack in their conferences, to know exactly in the moment, hey, here's where you stand, here's what you need to do, and now the ball's in your court. You know what I mean? You need to win these next 3 games, and if you don't, well, sorry, that's on you. You knew you had to win those 3 games. And it's not this sort of fuzzy math thing where in the end, the committee makes a decision and the team kind of feels hosed about it because they didn't know in the moment what they needed to do to get in.
Okay, before we go on, let's just identify. There's a website right now that where you can get this ranking and see where things stand in Wins Above Bubble right now. Tell us how to access that.
Yeah, it's barttorvik.com. He's got a great site. It's kind of similar to Ken Pomeroy's, but it's BARTTORVIK. And then all the way on the right side, it's WAB, so Wins Above Bubble. You can sort by that. And what was so fascinating to me, Blair, is they had the tournament seeding show that they always do a month in advance. And I looked it up at the time. The top 4 seeds in order for that bracket reveal were the top 4 teams in order in Wins Above bracket. So it kind of speaks to how the committee normally does give out these seedings anyway. They kind of have a lean towards these resume measures. What have you done? What have you accomplished? Who is most deserving to be in these spots? So in essence, the committee is kind of quasi doing this at that level, why not have it automated the rest of the way so that everybody, again, knows exactly the standards and knows exactly what they need to get to. But yeah, right now, if I'm looking at it, Gonzaga is number 1 at 6.8 wins above bubble. Baylor's number 2 at 5.5. Obviously, that number could be higher if Baylor continued to play games. And that hasn't happened as much, obviously, because of their COVID shutdown. But Ohio State's 3rd, Michigan's 4th, Illinois is 5th, Alabama 6th. So again, most of that kind of seems in line with what most of the perception is out there based off these teams, how they've played, how they've done against very good opponents, and what their quality wins are. It's kind of all compressing that down. It's also giving teams full credit for good wins, mediocre wins, great wins. I mean, sometimes when you beat a bad team, you should get credit for that too. So it gives you credit for all the wins that you have, and not just kind of taking segments out and saying, hey, you get credit for this. So yeah, just another way to look at this thing. But yeah, if you go to barttorvik.com and click on the right side, you could look at exactly where teams are. And it's kind of fascinating right now to see even where teams where Kansas, Missouri, those sorts of teams are, because you could kind of pick out exactly where their seed line would be based off of what they've accomplished so far.
Well, credit for accomplishments on the court is something that the NCAA has tried to evolve over the years. We all remember the RPI years of the RPI nitty gritty, and now we're in the net, the net system, where teams get credit for beating good opponents, and especially credit for beating good opponents on the road. And the NCAA has tried to, in spirit, has tried to refine their process and to make it as more precise as they can possibly get it, while being subjective at the same time, while having a committee meet. And I've taken part in some mock bracketing exercises, and heck, for I don't know, 15 years, I was doing mock brackets pretty regularly for the Star. And I can attest, it's next to impossible
it's hard
to get it right. It is. It's really hard to try to distinguish the 7th place team in the ACC from the 2nd place team in the Mountain West, and with different types of schedules, that sort of thing, and different records. So I kind of like the preciseness of this particular system. But one thing I do wonder about, Jesse, is one of the reasons the committee gets together is to discuss, conditions like, okay, the star player was injured and missed 3 games, and that team lost those 3 games. Well, now the injured player, obviously, in that case, in the Bart Torvik system, that wouldn't account for. It would account only for the loss, not for your All-America player being missing for those losses. That's something I know the committee does discuss when they get together. Takes that into account. So I don't know, maybe there is that's one reason why there is a committee.
I understand that, Blair. I think here's the problem with that. And I understand where people would want to sort of humanize these things to make sure that those sorts of things get accounted for. I think sometimes, though, when we're trying to go out of our way to make sure that the outliers are accounted for, sometimes you weave your way off the path farther from where you want to be. You know what I mean? And, I remember like the Kenyon Martin year where his knee got blown out and that moved Cincinnati off of the 1 line, for example. But I remember thinking to myself at that time, why should Cincinnati be punished for that? They earned their 1 seed. Now, listen, Kenyon Martin's not playing for them, but didn't they earn that over the course of time? Shouldn't they be a 1 seed? And so even then, like getting into those philosophical arguments, I'm not sure like what the adjustment should be when a good player goes out for 3 games. I mean, so if that team goes 3-0 in that stretch, I guess they get credit for the wins. But if they go 0-3, you're not going to dock them for the losses. I mean, then you would mostly want your good players to be out, I guess, because you're not going to be punished if you lose those games. So again, for me, I guess just kind of big picture for this, I can see where humans would want to say, hey, let's take these instances and make sure that there's not outliers here. Let's make sure we trail these teams fairly. But I think in general, it's kind of like life sometimes. Like a lot of this stuff is going to even out in the end. And the better thing to do is probably just to stick with the system and just believe that it's going to work, and that, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 things are going to be a little bit crazy. But like I said, I'm not even sure there's a perfect solution to what we're even talking about here with the Kenyon Martin solution, or, hey, your best player's out, but then you go 0-3, or what if you go 3-0? I mean, then you get credit for those wins or so again, no easy answers here, but this is a kind of streamlined, basic way to say, what did your team accomplish? What did your team accomplish? And again, if the NCAA is mostly going to seed based off of that or put teams in the tournament based off of that, then this is a pretty easy way to do it.
An example of what I'm talking about can be applied to a team that we're covering, Missouri. They've played the last 2 games without Jeremiah Tillman. They're a big guy in the middle, and they've lost both games as favorites at home to Arkansas, and then a kind of a hideous loss on Tuesday night at Georgia, a game in which they were a 4-point. In fact, they were favored in both games and lost both of them. I think Jeremiah Tillman would have made a difference in both games, but he wasn't there. The Tigers lost it. Now they lug a 3-game losing streak into Saturday's game at South Carolina. So, hey, could I get you to look at the Bart Torvik seriously and see what Missouri's wins above bubble against South Carolina would be right now? And I think South Carolina is let's see, where are they on this? I have to look. They're way down, like in the 180s, I think.
So according to Bart Torvik's number, the wins above bubble for at South Carolina would be 0.38. So that would be what they will gain, 0.38 if they defeat South Carolina. So a normal bubble team would beat South Carolina, win at South Carolina 62% of the time. So again, that's kind of what we're talking about in real time. This is a nice opportunity for Missouri to build on its resume, even if it's not nobody's gonna look at the end of the season and circle and say, hey, at South Carolina, huge win for the season, but this would give some credit to Missouri. And you can talk about this, Blair, since you've been covering Missouri now for the last week and watched them against Georgia, but this seems like a team right now that's sort of in need of that sort of confidence builder. Like you said, especially with Tillman out and especially with a 3-game slide, this was a team that was riding high, top 10 in the AP poll not too long ago, but at this point could definitely use some sort of positive momentum.
Hasn't won since the top 10 ranking came out. The 3-game losing streak has coincided with their top 10 ranking, and now they were number 20 going into this week's games and already have a loss. I suspect if they win at South Carolina, they might be able to hold on to their top 25 spot. If they lose, they're absolutely going to get bumped out of the top 25. But in this Bart Torvik list, they are 21st. So that would make them, if the tournament was selected today and using this system, they'd be a nice 6th seed right now, which probably reflects a top 25 team, but at the back end of the poll. And maybe at one point you would have seen them as a 3 or a 4 seed, but a 3-game losing streak is that's going to, especially those games haven't come against ranked opponents, although Arkansas got in the poll after beating Missouri. So I think it's a fairly accurate reflection of the perception of Missouri.
Yeah, and I think this speaks exactly to the nuance of what we're talking about here, Blair, because I know I don't know if you noticed this, Blair. Some Missouri fans have gotten after me a little bit on my AP poll vote.
Wait, what?
Just a little bit.
Well, explain why, because that it is
true.
But
this is exactly right. This is exactly the nuance. So when I vote my poll, I use a lot of the advanced metrics, the predictive metrics. Basically, they look at every possession and say, how have you done over the course of the season on every single possession? These tend to tell us, and as you mentioned earlier, they seem to kind of line up more with the Vegas line. So if you're going to match up this team against this team on a neutral court, who's going to win? That's how I choose to do my AP poll vote, because I think if you're trying to say, hey, who are the best 25 teams, that's kind of what we're trying to do with the AP poll vote. It's kind of like a power ranking. You know what I'm saying?
It is.
So if you're looking at Missouri, and I keep telling people this that are upset with me that I haven't ranked Missouri, but would you rather have Jesse Newell rank you high because you are one of the quote best teams, or would you rather have a very good resume, which is going to get you a better seed in the NCAA tournament and be favorable to the NCAA selection committee? You'd rather have the latter. And that's exactly what you're talking about, Blair, because if you go and look, Missouri has a very, very good resume. You know what I mean? They beat Illinois. They beat Tennessee. They beat Kentucky. They beat Alabama. They did all those in close games. But again, that a stat like wins above bubble is going to love those type of teams, because they're going to get full credit for that win, whether they won by 1 or by 20 or by 40. Now, again, the measures I look at to rank my teams, or to rank the teams in my poll, they're going to say, hey, look, Missouri has these wins, but they're really good in close games. And the games that they've lost in blowout fashion. So maybe they're not quite as good as their resume says. But again, if you're Missouri and you want to make the NCAA tournament, I've seen people out there say, is Missouri on the bubble? No, Missouri's not on the bubble. They're not close to the bubble, because what they've earned so far is the resume measures and the good wins they have. That's going to be impressive to a selection committee, just as it's impressive to the wins above bubble. So yes, as you mentioned, Missouri right now being the top 6 seed, or the number 1, or the top of the 6 line right now, that's something they've earned. That's something that they've accomplished over the course of the season. So that obviously can go up. It obviously still can go down based off of the results the rest of the season. But the Tigers definitely deserve what they've gotten in that regard. And they're not close to the bubble because of what they've accomplished when it comes to wins and losses.
You know, you because of where you are and you're an AP voter, you've gotten some attention particularly as it pertains to Missouri. But what's another team that you vote for that on your poll, or not in your poll, your top 25, that varies differently from the AP top 25?
Well, Missouri is the case this year, but there's been ones in the past like it. Arizona State had 2 consecutive years. One, when they beat Kansas at home, I was the only pollster that didn't rank them, and that created just a little bit of a stir. But
little bit of mail from Tempe,
just a little bit. 2 weeks later, Arizona State was not ranked, and again, this is the thing that kind of plays out over time when it's given more games and more possessions. Usually, it does play out over time. Marquette was kind of one of those examples a few years back when they were winning a bunch of close games. This year, it kind of depends. So a couple years ago, it's funny. A couple years ago, I was what people thought was way too high on Auburn, and actually had a national reporter write about how I was way too high on Auburn. And it was like a week before they went on to win 14 straight and make the Final Four. The next year, I was way too low on Auburn because of the same thing. They won a bunch of close games, the metrics. And, it's just funny how it all plays out, because the same fan bases that will come at me and say, hey, you hate my team, you hate my area, why do you hate San Diego? Then like a year later will come at me like, hey, you're the best pollster ever, we love you, that sort of thing. So it is sort of funny. But yeah, the bias to me, I know people use that word and throw it out all the time, but my bias is the numbers and trying to treat all these teams exactly the same. And kind of like you spoke about before, Blair, there might be outliers. There might be examples out there of this not perfectly working out, but I think if I go and try to find those, I'm probably steering too far off course, and usually it's going to put me in a bad spot. But Missouri, of course, lucky me, Missouri has been the outlier of outliers. They're the team this year that has all the close wins, all the huge 20 and 15 point losses. The advanced, predictive numbers don't really like them that much, and the resume numbers do. And so it is sort of fascinating to follow, because if you are Hanzo Martin, you absolutely want to be ranked high in the AP poll. You can send it out in mailers, you can recruit, you want that for the program, step it up, all those sorts of things. Yet if you're in your coaches meetings, you should be reading Ken Pom and Bart Torvik and team rankings, because you want to have the best team at the end of the season. You want to be able to be favored in your second round game or your Sweet 16 game, those sorts of things. So while behind the scenes, he's working to improve his team so that it's better in the predictive rankings, on the outside, he sort of has to clamor to be high in the AP poll, because it's going to help him out in recruiting as well. And again, that's why I'm sure I get a lot of that feedback. But as far as Missouri goes, is there any update on Tillman? Blair, what is the status of that? Because obviously he is a huge part of what Missouri has done this season.
Yeah, as we mentioned, we're recording this on Thursday about 2 p.m. and no update yet. I suspect we will. Missouri has announced the day before the games that if Tillman was going to be available. I suspect we will learn that on Friday. So maybe by the time this podcast drops, we will know if Jeremiah Tillman will play at South Carolina. He's missed the last 2 games because of a death in the family. So totally understandable that he hasn't been with the team. So, well, Jesse, I love your thoughtful approach to everything that you do, but especially when it pertains to college basketball, and I absolutely love it when Missouri or Kansas State's involved in in a way that brings attention that maybe you don't want. But I love you stick to your guns, and that's a great thing as well. So thanks for the conversation, and we will catch up again next week when we talk with you and Gary Bador about KU basketball.
Sounds great, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeat KC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
Laverne, what are you doing? I'm scuffing up the bottom of my new shoes so I don't fall and make a fool of myself. Oh, yeah. Like last time. I never did get a piece of that cake. Perfume! Perfume! I need some perfume! Perfume! Thank you.
If you're of a certain age, like me, kind of old, you recognize that clip from Laverne Shirley, a sitcom that ran in the late 70s and early 80s. Penny Marshall was a co-star. She played Laverne. Later, Marshall became an accomplished director and producer, and among her credits was the great baseball movie A League of Their Own, starring Gina Davis and Tom Hanks. Who knew she had a collection of Negro Leagues Baseball memorabilia? Vahe Gregorian recently talked to Negro Leagues President Bob Kendrick about the connection, and please excuse the echoey sound of the conversation. They were speaking in person, from a distance, and with masks.
It's a romantic story, but baseball is a romantic sport. So we fall in love with the romantic nature of these courageous athletes who overcame adversity to play the game they love, that we do sometimes lose sight. And this was a thriving black business enterprise. And so the journal helps bring that into greater perspective with a whole lot more clarity, with it.
And is it I guess I can look at the display page, but it's like, are there personal notes in there too, or it's really just a ledger?
And there are some notations within the ledger, but I mean, every transaction is documented in that book. So gate receipts, everything that took place over that time span.
And what time span is it?
1920 to 1925. Foster gets sick in 25.
Oh yeah, okay.
I know. Yeah.
The significance of the Bud Fowler letter. And I guess we'll be able to see some of the
It's hard to kind of make out, but he was writing it to, he wrote it to Charles Comiskey.
Right.
But the significance of Fowler is that he is that pre-Negro League kind of iconic figure. They always talk about, from the standpoint most recently now of Edward White, who, quite frankly, I'm not sure he knew he was black, but he was black, who had played in that one game in Providence. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Bud Fowler and Moses Fleetwood Walker as these early pioneers to play on what would be called a major league team prior to Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in 1947. So this turn of the 19th century kind of ball player, black ball player, who was a star ball player, is really important to bring a piece of that level, because most of, it's like anything else, recency kind of takes over in virtually everything, and it did in this story. So the 19th century or the early ever black ball players, they don't get a lot of love because the likes of Buck O'Neill and Monty Irvin and those guys talked about primarily their contemporaries, and then that's what we talk about more times than not. And so it's the deep researchers that know about the Bud Fowlers and the Fleetwood Walkers, and so this brings that element to light as well. So
what is Bud seeking of Charlie Comiskey?
It was congratulating him on some of the success that they had in the Northeast, and and so it was an interesting letter, and it was near the end of Fowler's life.
Okay, so it wasn't hoping for a chance.
No, because he was too late for him at that point in time.
Okay. That's interesting, though. Look at that. We've talked about this a little bit, but you said it with a little more clarity. I'm just thinking to myself, how much has the last year made you feel more like this is social justice, civil rights? I mean, you felt like that all along.
I felt like, but it brought it to the forefront. It really did. It really did, and it created for the outside world a greater connectivity to the museum in a realm that they had not looked at the museum at prior to. We've always known that we were a civil rights institution and a social justice institution. I'm not sure other people had grasped it from that standpoint. But all of a sudden, after the George Floyd murder, people did start to turn. And it gave us an opportunity now to kind of really push that agenda, and it's opened up a whole nother realm for the Negro Leagues Museum, and I think added even more value to the museum.
I feel like I can feel that just from what you've done, but I also find myself wondering, like, for instance, the Athletes in Activism program, maybe, probably you would have done it at some point anyway, but I wonder if that's a direct...
It's no question.
Yeah.
No question. But we've always been thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
But this has sped up the process on several different levels. And Raymond alluded to it. As a museum, and then you and I talked about this as well, as a museum, you spend so much energy trying to bring people to see what you have. And then the pandemic forced you to now think about, how do I get what I have out to those who can't come see me?
Yeah. That's...
So it totally changed my, not totally changed
but
my thinking, but it sped up the speedometer for sure on the time frame in which we needed to do it. We needed to accelerate this effort.
Yeah. That's... We've talked a little bit about Penny Marshall before, but not to the point where I know. Did you have a prior relationship with her?
No,
did you know
but she had a relationship with Byron Motley, the late great Bob Motley's son.
Okay.
The father of Bob Motley, who is the umpire here at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum.
Yeah.
So she and Byron had a long-standing relationship. As a matter of fact, Byron had written a screenplay on Effa Manley that Penny had signed on to direct. And unfortunately, she never got to that project.
I see. Okay. But what is your sense of appreciation for her? I mean, obviously you've said it, but just the idea that she got that interested and tweaked it. That a Hollywood
star of her magnitude had an interest in the Negro Leagues, and then thought enough about the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum to make sure she left her collection to us. And as I shared with Raymond, to me, it doesn't matter if there are these extraordinarily rare items in the collection or not. It's who the collection came from. That really is significant. It's like the Geddy Lee baseballs. Those baseballs are cool, but they were made even cooler because they came from Geddy Lee.
Absolutely.
And it's the same for me with Penny Marshall.
Do you know, I mean, it's probably hard to know this. Do you know where that interest started? I mean, obviously she was interested in baseball in general.
For quite some time. But I don't know where this deep-rooted connection to the Negro Leagues came. And when it came. But like I said, I know she had a tremendously close relationship with Byron Motley, the son of legendary Negro Leagues umpire Bob Motley.
Okay, I'm glad to know that at least we have some of that connection. I think you were engaging somebody on Twitter about the idea of Topps cards.
Yes.
Is that a thing I should try to allude to at some point?
We are in discussion, so I think it's going to happen here pretty soon.
That's pretty, and there's different than anything like that, right? Not. There
have been a few other card companies that sprinkle a Negro Leagues card. Ted Williams did a card set once upon a time, but for someone the magnitude of Topps to look at Negro Leagues, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that is.
That'll do it for today and this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Bonnie Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell and Vahe Gregorian for participating in today's show. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we have another deal for you. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. That's kansascity.com/SportsPass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all of the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkirkhoff@kcstar.com, and I'll get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Monday with another episode.